I think we're on track now. What's up? What's up? All right, so things are sort of hectic in the shop studios. Unfortunately, I don't have real studios. It's just the shop. But I've been told actually this is sort of more interesting than maybe a regular old studio, because you get to see what kind of weird things are going on in the shop. I guess if that's interesting, maybe interesting to somebody out there. All right, here we go. Boom, transition over here. What is up, y'all? Let me see. Do we have anybody? We have one person on. Welcome. You are unique in the world, um, in all of the billions of people on this planet. You and I are connected and trying to figure out what the hell is going on this planet. Oh man, I forgot. All right, so tonight is a weird night. I have the shop door open, and so I am exposed to all manner of humanity who may be walking by in front of our studio tonight, quote unquote. Anyway, so welcome. We're gonna still keep on talking. All that means is that there's a potential that we could have unknown guests. Um, but welcome to the Boyd. The title. Oh, by the way, Seprock Beats, number 215. I don't know. He's got these all labeled in an unconventional way, compared to probably other. Um, I don't want to say nomenclature, but like I guess convention. At least titling convention for tracks and albums. Also, there's gonna be bugs because the door is open to the world. The reason is because I don't really have a lot of room with this car, and I guess I could have made it work. But even if I did, I would have had to start it, and every time I start it, it makes this big blast of this sort of, I don't know if it's oil. I think it is. Or it might be fuel. I think it's fuel. Actually, when I smell it, it doesn't smell so much like of oil as much as it might be running rich. Something's weird going on. I gotta look at it. I don't really even know. I gotta learn more about it, to be honest with you. Superfan Chris is with us. What is up, Superfan Chris? Yeah, so anyway, so there you go. So he's joining us tonight. I mean, we are, yeah, it looks like it's just you and me right now. Anyway, that's what's going on with this vehicle sticking out. As you can see, classic Mercedes. Um, but I think a little bit of the Hollywood magic or the movie magic of the Boyd is that I can't reveal too much about it, so you only get what's in the shot. That's sort of the rules. Though I could move the camera slightly, you can see a little bit more of what's going on if you wanted to. Hold on, let me change some things. You know, it's weird. I got all these notices. I'm sure you guys relate with this. I got all these notices for updating my laptop with Dell, this and that, whatever. So I do it. And now my dual screen doesn't work. And like now my settings are all ski wampus looking. Oh man, on my display settings. What's going on? Anyway, that's neither here nor there. That just shows my ignorance in this field of computer management. I used, I had like an A plus cert, which was really sort of meaningless. But to people that don't know, it's actually like they don't know. Anyway, you learn about computers with like a little bit in more in depth than maybe like an intro class in high school or something. Anyway, I used to feel like I was pretty good. I can navigate around some stuff now, but it's like, man, I got to go through all sorts of different crap. It's just tedious, is the thing. I would rather go back to DOS, and at least I knew what the hell was going on. I could just be like, bap, bap, and it would just do the thing. I'm like, it would just do what I said. Like, I got these issues with YouTube. So I set up these YouTube videos, right? And so I'm trying to share it on Facebook, but it's got like the thumbnail, or like the photo preview is a picture from like 2 months ago, like 10 episodes ago. I mean, I don't even know, a long time ago, episodes ago. And I'm like, what is going on? So I'm trying to change all these settings and blah blah bloop bloop. And I'm like, I'm just working around it at this point. It's not even working. There's some kind of glitch that has YouTube's got some old information or some shit that Facebook's pulling. I don't even know. I don't know. This is showing my ignorance in this field, which I recognize. Um, and that goes all the way around back to the topic of the show, is ignoring ignorance. I think how many of us really, let's talk about it, are willing to look at ourselves and realize whether or not we're ignorant about something. Um, and the title, the little thumbnail thing for this is Confucius saying, right, that real knowledge is really um, being aware of the level of your ignorance, and that's, there's so much to know in the world. I think that's where we're running into a problem, is that we're specialized to such a degree, and there's so much to know that humans, it's like, how much can you possibly know? And it's also become an interesting socio dynamic. I don't know. I figured we could just talk about it. I was gonna maybe show some video clips from these other folks, but I don't know. I keep getting in trouble for showing video clips, so I don't know if they're anyway. Um, Not in trouble, but like I already have barely any viewers. So come on, guys. You guys are unique, yes, but also it's okay to talk about the Boyd and share it if you'd like. But we do have two people watching. Welcome. Um, but Superfan Chris says, one day, sedan, some beauty in the drive. Yes, going to be Benz in the drive. Absolutely. Coming soon. Excuse me. Um, I thought it was funny. I have asthma, so every once in a while I cough. I get some phlegm, and I don't want to get into too much detail. But it happens, especially when there's pollen or something. I get like the nose thing, but I also get like, asthma crap. And now it's like, it's like as if there's no excuse for having a cough. There's no like pre-COVID cough. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I've been coughing since I remember. I remember running wind sprints and crap to try to get over my cough, which was asthma the whole time, when I was playing football. That's how stupid people were around me. I think they were just trying in denial. I don't know if they're stupid. I don't want to call them stupid. Um, I don't know what I didn't know any better. I didn't even know about asthma. When I heard about asthma, my pops told me like, "Oh no, blah blah blah." I think it's because he knew that it would have barred me from military service. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know. But yeah. Anyway, it's just weird. It's like now that COVID came, it's like, oh, if you had a cough, there's no such thing. It's like you have to have COVID. I know COVID's serious and all that stuff, but that shit is there's still some funny aspects about it. Anyway, yes. So I'm ignorant about some computer shit, and a lot of times I think to some degree we're willing to throw up a flag and say, look, I don't know what the fuck's going on. I'm gonna hire somebody, or I don't have the will, skill, or time to do this or that. And that's where specialists come in, which is great. And you shouldn't have to know everything. We stand on the shoulders of giants, of people who learned and disseminated information. And now I feel like there's some kind of new phenomenon, call it fake news, call it whatever you want to call it, or there's too many, like, you know what I mean? Everybody, you can put it in whatever segment or definition you want. It Everybody has their own flavor, and you can't change them. That's the thing. I think that's the overarching premise here, is that people are not, and maybe this is forever. I don't know if it's always been the same way. I feel like people have been at least a little bit more rational in their thought process of whether or not they're willing to listen and see. It's like we've gone to an extreme of like a convolution, convulsion, or I don't know, some kind of distortion of reality that that people almost like literally don't see the same thing when they look at something, and it's really getting disturbing. And I feel like these are the types of atmosphere or social conditions, really, that I guess the parameters socially, in a way, that is leading to major social conflict, if not civil war, something like that ish stuff. Like when you literally cannot see the world the same, there's a fundamental difference in how you're going to run the world. And like for instance, in Brazil right now, there's a worry that gold miners, they call them gold diggers, that gold miners and people who are in the forestry business are carrying COVID into the forest, and they are infecting indigenous tribes and indigenous cultures, etc. These people have been living in the forest for whatever, and they've been granted by thus far, historically, the Brazilian governments have always granted them some type of sovereignty within the great forests, of Brazil. And now they have this sort of like guy that very Trumpian in the way he does things. I think that's going to become a thing, to be Trumpian, if you are someone who is of little thought, of little forethought, of little thought in general, but who also is very self-serving and very uh, focused on now, really. Now, as in the immediate, what's the next step? Like, for instance, it could be the next election, which is technically not quote unquote now, but it's pretty now compared to whether or not you wipe out an indigenous tribe that will no longer live there. That DNA knowledge or like existence will now be wiped out because of this continued effort to continue to harvest and extract from this area, and you're now exposing people that don't have very strong immunity to current diseases, let alone novel diseases, right? So, Superfan Chris says we all have knowledge, but we're continually seeking out answers. When do we stop seeking and accept reality we are in? Who has the answers? Is it best to continually seeking and researching? And that's an interesting question, and this is sort of unrelated, but maybe related. I don't know. We'll see. But I've been reading the Tao Te Ching. I don't know. It's the Tao, the Tao, and written by Lao Tzu, and it's just sort of it's these sort of paragraphs of the description of the way, or Tao, or this existence, right? And one of the key elements of the way of being is I mean, I guess the key element of it, it's not so much of a religion as it's a way of being and seeing things. You wouldn't need a religion if you were Taoist. If um, you wouldn't worship the Tao, and the Tao isn't God, and the Tao isn't even the Tao. It's like you can't name this thing. Anyway, what it is not important, but it is all important. It's like one of those things. Um, it it's sort of, I feel like we have to honestly look at the world around us and see that in whatever proves to be the reality, there is a reality that's shared, unless we believe that we are all living our own separate reality that we're making up, and everyone else is fake, and we live in like this weird matrix thing. I mean, that's known as a solipsistic point of view. I don't know if you guys heard of that. I'll pull that up. That's I on a sort of also related. I don't know if I want to call this ignorance, but I mean, sure, whatever. On a somewhat related path, or topic, I guess. Hold on, let me find this thing. Um, I'm gonna try to show you guys this. Okay, I should be able to. Oh, solipsism. All right, so let me. I still got. So one of these days, I'm gonna have a live producer, and then it'll be like super duper, right? All right, here we go. All right, so solipsism. I hope this is working. Is this working? Yeah, I think it's working. All right, solipsism. The view or theory that the self is all that can be known to exist, right? Um, so it's like it's this. If the one way to look at it is, it's the idea that you well, what's going on here? Where's my camera? I hold on. Oh, see, one of these days, I just lost my camera. Hold on. Oh my goodness, what is going on? Well, there's that. At least, why? Um, there's got to be a way to get this back to normal. I know there is, but I don't know how to do it right now. Anyway, solipsism. So the solipsistic point of view. Why did I bring this up? Well, because recently I commented on a sort of a contemporary sort of like a, what do we call a motivational spiritual guide kind of person. And I sort of accused, in a way, and I don't want to say accused, that's a strong word, I think. Um, said that she's skirting with solipsism, in that she was part of this spiritual guide's belief system is that through your will and thought and belief that you can manifest um, things into motion, right? Into being, and and so part of me, well, what I my comment to her was that, some people don't, you know have things that happen upon them. People have manifested things upon them. The idea that what you think will manifest means, in a way, that what you manifest thusly becomes, what about all those that are manifesting around you, right? And then it becomes sort of like this, like, manifest war, which may happen. I mean, maybe we just need to untap this, like, untapped, resource, possibly. There's a there's a conspiracy. I don't know if you guys heard about the conspiracy theory out there, about that the Area 51 people that came and visited us weren't actually aliens, but they were people from the future, and they wanted to tell us that in the future we will be able to do so much more and unlock so much more. We realize that human consciousness and our ability to manipulate consciousness, and consciousness is a component to the universe, and thusly, as we learn to harness consciousness, we harness the universe. And that's how they ended up time traveling, because they were able to figure out how to do that. I don't know that I believe it, right? So I'm very skeptical. I don't see evidence that this guy just says these things, yay, right? So I'm not going to believe this guy per se. Now, does that mean I'm just trying to get this. Is very cramped in this area because this camera has a very narrow angle. Anyway, what was I gonna say? Oh, and this also this microphone has a oddly. It's made for an auditorium, but it's oddly not very sensitive. I have to turn the volume way up, and then I get all this other weird stuff. Anyway, I don't want to get all nerdy on you about that. What was I going to tell you? What was I talking about? I don't even remember. So, what do you guys think about that? I think one of the problems is we don't want to be wrong to a point where we will make shit up. We will lie to you. I mean, we will lie. I mean, people lie, not we. This like people. Maybe I mean that's that's what I strive to do is just simply see reality. Lao Tzu would talk about, I mean, I can't speak for Lao Tzu, but just in a little tiny bit that I know that I'm reading about the Tao is that and this goes along to some degree with the teachings of the spiritual person, right? The spiritual guide to just sort of let the like Tao is this sort of flow, this sort of thing that is, right? And you just sort of let it be. One of the things that he says in there is that the master doesn't see never seeks fulfillment because to seek fulfillment means that you leaves you open to manipulation, right? So and one of the other things to it's this idea that by giving up everything that you thereby gain everything, that you have everything, and it's sort of an odd idea, especially with the idea of property rights and things like that. But it's an idea of really giving up the idea of property, of the importance of that it's fleeting, that there's a bigger importance, and that we're all part of it. There's one thing. Um, I don't know. But maybe not. I mean, I don't know. This is from thousands of years ago. Maybe he's crazy. I don't know. I feel like as I read it, it's almost in a way putting in words the weird thing that I feel like I've known. He's describing the feelings of what I felt like there is something like that. It's hard to describe. You don't worship this thing that is and isn't. It doesn't matter, and it is all that matters. It's what everything comes from, but it's inconsequential in anything else. And you can think about it like any event that ever happened. Any and it leaves a resonating mark, whether you know it or not, right? Um, you just because you can't perceive it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So, for instance, when they talk about a car being less than 40%, in the range of 30% efficient, being a high efficient car engine, or even a car in general, what they're talking about is the emission of heat, sound, vibration energy, friction energy, all of these different forms or energy, the energy lost from the combustion of that hydrocarbon fuel and oxygen, that energy lost goes out into something, right? Mostly into the air, right? Either as sound or heat, and gets absorbed into this great big sponge of the atmosphere. It's like this giant buffer, right? And it just absorbs it and sort of sends the ripples out, and we don't see it. We don't really perceive it, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And so all of those molecules that were affected, that were a little bit more energized because of the heat of friction or the heat of this or that or the sound of this or that, right? All of that creates information, an effect on the universe, right? In our immediate universe in this case. But that event happened, right? And so it's simply in a way the causal chain of events that leads to all events. All events have come from a causal chain of events. When people say that all things happen for a reason, it's like, well, yeah, sure they do. all things happen for, like, for instance, the waves of the ocean, they happen for a reason. Each single one of them happen for a reason, right? But do we think about every reason of every time of everything that ever happens, right? So everything does happen for a reason, but if we try to add more on top of the causal chain of events, now we're inventing reason. We're creating and crafting our own narrative of reason, right? So where I think, trying to figure out. I think that's the quest of science, is always, as the true intrinsic quest of real science is to try to figure out the real world around us, you know, um, and that's supposed to be the goal. Now, of course, it's been bastardized, right? Capitalism and the profit motive have bastardized that pursuit. There is no such thing in the capitalist society, in this capitalist realism that we live in, right? There's no such thing as intrinsic motivation. Do you ever hear about that? Right? Whenever they talk about why someone would do something, why you would get the best of the best, or why anything would motivate someone to do something, it's always motivated by money. They never talk about a teacher who could get an engineering job but chooses to work at high school, right? That chooses to become a college professor or whatever, right? And they maybe could do this other thing, and they've decided, no, I'd rather help teach engineering because I feel people aren't learning engineering, and that's what they want to teach, right? And then what if they become really good at it? And they give up the chance to make more, even more money, or maybe they want to become a research scientist who makes zero money, lives off grants, eats canned meat on toast as a special occasion dinner, right? That kind of lifestyle versus I could work as a head of R&D for, some notable company that manufactures anything, right? And that'll get you some money because any manufacturer of any good that makes a lot of them has engineers, and those engineers, they make a lot of money because they are able to, if they're able to scale out that engineering and turn a profit on it, they get a piece of that profit usually, or they get some money to entice the best engineers that can get that done, right? So what about the engineer who gives up all of that to become a teacher? What about the engineer who gives up on that to become an activist? Right? There's an intrinsic motivation that in this capitalist society and in this reality that we don't talk about, right? And so I don't remember exactly how that looped back into it, but it's true. There is that aspect. Oh yes, so to where science has become bastardized, because there is at its core there are people mixed in to the corrupted ones, and those that are, because of material conditions, compelled to act in bad faith, right? If you have a chance to, like, if you're not gonna, I don't know, if you're not gonna get funding, or funding got cut to do the thing you really wanted to do, right? Are you going to jump over to just work at some company making widgets for them? It's totally not what you want to do, etc. Some people would do it, some people wouldn't. Some people, maybe they would, and they would give up something, or maybe they would find a way to fund this research themselves because they just were that intrinsically motivated. It exists. I mean, it doesn't like exist everywhere, but there are people and examples of it, where it exists, right? And so that's part of a reality that we, number one, have to acknowledge, and then number two, we have to know that we have to think about how do we figure out measures to ensure that we have some type of purity, right? Without the standard bearer of purity being corrupted. We simply just have a spiritual. I mean, it sounds. I don't know. I'm like not really into spiritual stuff, but um, there is really, I mean, more of an ethereal question that we have to ask ourselves as a society, of how we're gonna behave. What kind of people are we gonna be? What's acceptable? Like, how can we have a democracy when people don't know what's up or down? When people don't know what the fuck they're talking about? I mean, we are living in a world where half the world thinks there's a major pandemic that's sweeping through, that's gonna kill people, and the other half thinks it's a hoax that's concocted by George Soros or some crap. Like, it's both nothing, like it's just basically the flu, to it's a biological weapon created by China. Like, I don't fucking know. I mean, and you can find somewhat looking credible looking ish shit on the internet pretty post haste, right? Like, that will back your shit. And basically, we've put ourselves in little tiny minutia, whatever those little Russian dolls. What are they even called? Anyway, those little Russian dolls. We're just like, people refuse to see the things that are on the quote unquote other side of whatever the side it is. Right? It's like, I mean, look, I look at lefties, for the most part, they're sort of boring. Like, you see the SJW crowd, it's just like, well, there's this highly manipulated group of kids and people, and even professors, and these super liberal people who are like, that are super into identity politics and standard bearing, or flag waving about something like virtue signaling, right? And that exists. That's true. That truly exists. But that's sort of fringy. There's not a ton of those. I mean, they're out there. And unfortunately, the media really sort of exalts them. And so, like, anybody that's sort of left would probably see, oh, these are the lefties, these are my allies. So they would probably look to them as if that represented them to some degree, which is totally false, right? Because at the same time, if you look at it, but you see stuff like, they're sort of boring in a way. There's a lot. There's contradictions and stuff, but it's like, it's nothing really super fundamentally flawed contradiction. It's sort of like they're overreactive about, like, um, you know, about gender stereotypes or this or that, like what you can say or not say, or whether the government should get involved in that stuff. Look, we should talk about some of that stuff, sure, as a society, that's great. But I think some of that stuff obfuscates the reality that we are living in a really crazy time, where basically information, the economy, um, so many things are sort of like losing the patina, and it's revealing how bad the rust really was. Like, at first it was cute, but now, like, the floor's rotted out. You're like, oh shit, rust has a, like, reality. Yeah, it's not all kitschy and shit or whatever. Like those Pinterest pictures where they're like out at a farm, it's got like cute rust, and it looks all cool, but it's also cool and clean, but it's like rough, you know. But it's like not, like, whatever. Yeah, until the fucking floor rusts out, and then what? And then you got Fred Flintstone car, right? Because yeah, it was cute, but yeah, it was. You had the patinas from sitting behind a barn, and then water got on the floorboards or something, like, and there's squirrel dropping, so something was living in it. So yeah, the patina suddenly loses loses the charm when the reality sinks in that you're sitting in this rotted sort of hull of something. So, like, yes, there is this social justice warrior liberal kind of group of people, but that is what gets highlighted by the media, right? And these people, sure, they may standard bear and flag wave and sort of contradict themselves on freedom on one end, but then trying to sort of dictate what to say. But it's like benign. Most of it's like whether you could say her. Now, if it starts putting people in jail or giving them material consequences, That's getting weird. I think it was happening in Canada. I can't see it happening in America, but I don't know. It could. Who the fuck knows? I don't know. That kind of thing could happen. Um, but I like. But see, that's the thing. Like the 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 major contradictions that I do see are on the conservative side, right? If you think about it. So on one hand, they'll say something like, "We don't trust the media," but on the other hand, if you ask them about left wing stuff, the left wing ideas and ideologies that they have are the images and concoctions for the most part, and some anecdotes here and there. But mainly, it's concoctions of these sort of fringy liberals that I was talking about, the super uber SJWs, and these people that make a big stink about something stupid, and they exalt them on high as if that is the narrative, right? Why? Why is that the case? There's a purpose for that. And by you as a conservative, for the conservatives that would dare listen to someone who says something critical of them, right? The conservatives are falling for the trap. You don't believe the media, but that's the only real image of the lefty liberal that you have is the concoction made by the media, right? And so I think a lot of conservatives find themselves in a position where I am just not that thing that I saw on TV. I'm not one of those people that think that way, that makes a big stink about this or that or whatever. And now some of these people are a little bit like, no, I should be able to say what racial slurs if I want. Da, da. I guess to that end, yeah, maybe we should have some kind of thing. But I mean, I don't know. I don't even know if it's the government really getting involved. Like, I don't know. Someone says a racial slur, and it's a known racial slur or something, and they get punched, or something happens to them by civilians. I feel like police could stand down for, like, I don't know, tap out rule. I don't know, like something, but like, yeah, there, there's got to be a way to mix it up. You know what I mean? Someone goes around calling people something. Yeah, I don't want the government necessarily throw them in jail. No, I feel like no, they should be able to call the boys up or whatever. I'd be like, this. I mean, it can go whatever ways, but it's like, I don't know. Nah, it shouldn't be like a super crazy thing, but maybe there was like, oh man, there was a crazy. There was a rule. I think it was Seattle. What was it? I can't remember. There was like MMA fighter that was going around, and like there was a rule, like basically if somebody got in a fight, that they would, because people were getting belligerent and getting in fights, but they wouldn't want to. The cops were getting called on everything all the time, and it's like, look, I'll just let them duke it, because like these guys will fight each other and then be friends the next day. So it's like, why are we sending the police out? Nothing's happening, right? It's not important for the police. So they had this rule where basically, I guess they were allowed to fight each other until it got too crazy or until one of them gave up. And the police just watched and let it happen and made sure nothing got crazy. I'm like, that sounds like a pretty good idea. It's like someone uses a racial slur and like everyone else is like gangs up on him and holds him still. I'm like, yeah, you go ahead, punch him. There you go, get one punch. All right. All right, break it up. You got punched. Hey, I think people would be all right with that. But we're in like, okay. So back to on topic, ignorance. This thing, like I said, like you got flat earthers. It doesn't matter what you tell them, right? It doesn't matter. How do you change it? How do you change a flat earther? Do you have to take them outside of the earth themselves? And that's the other thing is we are so divorced from primary research, right? What do I mean? Like the actual equipment, the shit like the stuff that what does it take? The double blind study, the survey, like the time, the money, the shit, whatever it takes to do this stuff. Like we're so far removed from this research, and I think this too. I think because the social dynamic has changed, because I've talked about this before, that we moved from the lion, the era of the lion, where the male or just the dominant force was able to exert its will on females or weaker males or whatever. Just the alpha got to do whatever, right? And just sort of Cro-Magnon shit, right? And got shit done that way through the club, through might. And we've now sort of morphed into the era of the peacock, right? Now, peacocks are pretty magnificent. In fact, we have these splendid birds walking some of the most gorgeous estates in the country, right? And why? What's going on? Remember, the peacock is the male, has all of the nice feathers, and the female has these sort of drab feathers, but it's got some squirts of, the fancy, but it's mainly drab, so it could like chill in the forest and not be seen and watch the eggs. So why the hell the male has to have all this shit, right? Because the forces, well, first of all, the size difference between the male and the female peacock isn't all that great, so the sexual dimorphism of their physical body and the relative non-violent nature of peacocks makes it so they don't sort of just bash each other. And I mean, there is some hierarchy and stuff. I don't really know a ton about peacock life, but here's the point. The point is they don't do shit by force. That fucking peacock has to go stand out vulnerable with these big ass feathers, right? That it can't. It's got to fold up like this long ass. I mean, how long is this shit? Like 6 feet? How long are these? At least 4 foot long. These feathers are fucking long. You've seen full size peacock feathers, no doubt, right? These are long ass feathers. They're hanging out his ass, right? And he has to go fly with this shit. Like a tiger could just go like in India. Just, any manner of cat. Just imagine the paw, dog, human. I mean, whatever the fuck wants to go like this can like grab a peacock. You know what I mean? And so why? Why does it do it? Because it wants to do it. It wants to hump the female, and the female, for whatever the fuck reason, decided, I only want to do it with the ones that has the biggest feathers. And they gotta be in the middle of the field, and they gotta make the most noise. Then I'll do it with it. Like, that's the kind of shit. Like, that's right. That's a big difference in the way society's working when the sort of tables have turned, right? So we're in sort of that realm now. In a way, somebody with a lot of intellect and knowledge, like a scientist or somebody who's a super specialist in their field, they become the intimidating thing. So now maybe back in the Cro-Magnon days, or maybe in the in not even that far long ago, not that long, now even in certain segments of our society, God, it was just physical. It was either youth or physical, like size, or something that was the intimidating factor. And to some degree it still is, but we know we live in a society where it's not acceptable to simply like beat someone up. But we do live in a society where you could get outwitted by somebody, sure, at any moment, right? They may not be allowed to smash your face into the table because they're bigger than you, but you could smash their ego into the table by making them look silly with your knowledge, right? And so that's the funny thing too, is that we all think we have like this some knowledge of something, right? We probably do. Most of us have some intrinsic thing motivating us that we just like. Our childhood did something where we just like this, or we just enjoyed this thing, or we discovered this thing, whatever the hell it is. You have this thing that you really enjoy. And I don't know. You intrinsically just do it, and you become sort of this master of it. And as Lao Tzu would say, you become it. You enter this flow state. I don't remember how to say it in Chinese, but there's a state where you, like, if athletes talk about the dream state, or to talk about how they sort of blank out when they go into, like, doing whatever it is they do, and they blank out, and they go, their mental readings basically say they go into a dream state. And what Lao Tzu would say is that they have now become that thing. That, what is it that you're doing? It could be playing basketball, it could be swimming, painting, whatever it is. When you're in that state of motion, or whatever you're doing, or you're writing, or whatever, freestyle rapping, it doesn't matter. You could be giving a speech, you could be doing a stupid podcast, right? And you go sort of in this zone, right? That's sort of the flow state, and you become that, right? That's what he would say, or that's Tao type stuff, right? You become that activity. You become painting. You become singing, right? That is you at the moment. You are one with it, that activity. And I mean, that's one way to look at life too. That you're one with this life, with the universe, with this activity. Um, you know, as Superfans Chris says, that the zone, when you're in the zone, exactly, you become that thing. You be golfing, you're in the zone, and you become that thing. You be a sniper. You're in the zone. You become sniper. You are it, right? It's I don't know. I don't even remember. Oh yeah, just intrinsically motivated. So you become sort of this master of it, and you should just be sharing that, right? And usually you want to, and you know though, if you share too much, then what? People are like, why you gotta say so much? Why you always gotta be talking about this? Why you always right? And that is something that the person who becomes the master, I mean, or on their way to master, has to contend with, because the egos of people that are too frail to recognize their own ignorance, and too frail to recognize masters of a craft amongst them. That's why, as much as I can, I try to chisel. To me, that type of frailty is unacceptable. That's a weakness, and I can build that. That's easy, to where I'm not intimidated by someone who knows more. I'm hungry to know what they know. How do I know? How can I even try? Can they say something in their knowledge of something? If I knew someone who knew quantum physics to a degree that I could never understand, they would probably give me a metaphor like, oh, you know what? One way to think of a neutrino is to think about this. I think my brother told me, basically. It's almost like it's it's a component of an atom. When you smash an atom, that's a part of what it's made out of. And it's another counter particle to another particle that's part of what makes up an atom. But some of this is theoretical, some of it's like they're pretty sure. They're still testing things. And that's where this whole thing comes back, all back around. You get weird stuff like, okay, going back to that spiritual leader, right? When I said it's very solipsistic to think that you could simply manifest things with your mind, right? And Superfan Chris says, let's, before I get into manifesting with your mind, let's talk about Superfan Chris. You can become one with whatever object or activity. Sometimes it's difficult to get into that zone. Does it take practice? Absolutely, it would take practice. And I think that's the thing, when you've done something so much that it becomes a memory, that you don't think about breathing. Well, that's part of different part of your brain, but you almost put that activity into that part of the brain almost. You don't think about walking, running. You had to learn how to do those things, but you don't think about it. You've done it so many times. You've honed that craft. You've built on the knowledge that you learned. When you were 2, you didn't run as well as 3. or 4 or 5 or 6. And when you became conscious of it, maybe you wanted to run for track. And when you became real conscious of it, you thought you could get a scholarship. You see what I mean? And these are sort of like, this is, it takes practice, but you have to have an intrinsic motivation, or you're forced into it, I guess. Or, but you have some type of motivation. Could be fear, could be your motivation. But usually the highest bounds and the biggest gains come from, like Michael Jordan. You know, oh God, he wasn't just doing it for the money. He got the money because he was amazing, and he played basketball, baseball, golf, whatever he was doing, because he intrinsically wanted to do it first. That was the first thing. Um, God, the reason I'm moving this stupid chair is so why do I have to move so comfortable? Do it on purpose to make sure I don't go too long. We're coming up almost an hour. Anyway, talk. Oh yeah, the spiritual leader and oh freaking what was I talking about? Quantum physics. We need to get our audience bigger, and you guys need to start talking. Thanks, Superfan Chris, by the way, and by the way, whoever's hanging out with us, you could jump into the chat and let us know your thoughts. We need to build the audience so we can get some thoughts going. But like I'll talk about the spiritual guide. She brings up quantum physics all the time, and how your consciousness can change things because quantum physics. And I'm like, oh. Because if it was the case, then I could just change things, or somebody somewhere out there could have harnessed this to do it, and they're not doing it. So, okay, why bring this up? And you know, I'll hear stuff dropped, like randomly dropped. The double slit experiment. These things are real, and whatever. I'm like, yeah, they are. They are definitely real. However, um, there's a context to it, and one of the things about Schrodinger's cat and the double slit experiment and all sorts of things like that is that it's revealing a lot about our world. So there's an idea, or there is something called superposition. It's this weird thing, and it's hard to explain. How is something two places at once? How does that exist in a reality? I don't know. I don't know. But we're learning more and more that photosynthesis runs off of, uses quantum physics, uses this idea of electrons having superposition. Um, there's a theory that consciousness is connected possibly to quantum physics and the idea of superposition and electrons having more than one location at any given time. So, yes, this is real. This exists. However, that doesn't mean that you necessarily have the ability to change it with your conscious thoughts. Maybe you have some impact. I'm not saying you don't. There's a lot for us to learn about consciousness. But what I'm saying is there are limits. Just like I can shine a flashlight through I can shine a flashlight through uh, what do you call it? A paper towel pretty easy. But I can't shine a flashlight, same flashlight, through equally or even thinner aluminum foil. Right? There are bounds to this material reality that we live in. So there may be some level of cognitive or even outside of this cognitive uh, realm of manipulation of the outside world, or other than physical manipulation of the outside world, or manifestation of our subconscious thoughts, that aren't related to our continual pursuit of something. If we consciously have something in our mind, are we not consciously, are we not always pursuing it? And if we're not always, if we continue pursuing something, won't we eventually get it? Otherwise, we'll just pursue it till we die, right? But you always believed. Yeah, well, That's what it takes, is to believe and pursue. But there's not so much the rest of it. Like, we can't talk about like Schrodinger's cat or the double slit experiment and things like that, and that humans affect the things that they measure, or we affect the world around us when we take a measurement. That's not necessarily the case. The paramount issue is that in order for us to observe something, we have to have something smaller than the item to observe it with. So let me explain. This is a little tricky because we're talking about subatomic things. We're used to things around us, like me. I have to adjust this lighting, makes me look like I have a shiny forehead, which I probably do. But, we are able to see and measure things that we're aware of because photons are coming out of these light sources and they're bouncing off of these things and into our eyes, and they're registering into signals in our brain. That I'm only able to have this rendition of the world because photons are so small that they are able to give me this specific, detailed, semblance of the world. Um, Same with bats. They're able to see the world because air molecules, the molecules making up the air, mixture of air molecules, that mixture is small enough, has like enough definition that they can see reflections in that medium. But when we start getting so far small that we're like the size of a photon, how are we gonna throw a photon at it and see it? Because by touching it with a photon, we're having to touch the photon. Maybe you can't touch two photons. So how do we measure it? We can't touch it with, if a photon's the only thing that we have that's small enough to get to its level, then we need them to touch somehow, that we need to measure or whatever, or we need to be able to measure that interaction, right? But how do you do that if the thing that you're trying to measure is the size of the thing that you're measuring with? It's sort of hard to explain, I guess. But like, for instance, the things that you see is because there's so many little photons hitting and then they bounce and then hit our eyes, we can see in high definition what's going on. But as you get smaller, subatomic, when we're looking at atoms, they may be so small that throwing a photon at them makes it so you still can't see it. Or the pieces of subatomic pieces, you can't throw a photon at it. Otherwise, now you've destroyed it. Who knows? There's all sorts of weird stuff. So that's the whole premise behind us changing, manipulating our environment. Because maybe it doesn't matter if I use a laser thermometer on your head. I'm not really changing your environment, but I sort of am. But it's so minute and minuscule that it doesn't matter, right? So as far as the laser itself and different things, but anyway, now I don't even remember what I was getting at. What do you guys think? We got two people. We've been on for about an hour. I don't really know. Did we cover really about ignorance? I think the main thing is that people aren't willing to be honest with themselves. Of course, we talked about Dunning-Kruger effect, the idea that by definition we are generally average. Now, of course, we have our specialty. We all have our intrinsically motivated specialty that we have and love. We should be sharing that. We should be accepting other people's gifts if they're giving us knowledge. If we have the opportunity to change our mindset, opportunity to be the dumbest person. No, don't try to be the dumbest, but it's an opportunity. When you're the dumbest person, don't mean to say dumbest, but the least knowledgeable person in the room, because that means other people can share their knowledge with you, and let them share. Some people are all too keen to share, and you should be keen to share your knowledge with others. Don't be a jerk about it. Be nice about it. Be like a teacher about it. Why don't you help your brothers and sisters? That's what we should be doing. That would be the way. That would be everything, but it would be nothing. Just be nothing to tell each other that thank you for telling me about quantum physics. Thank you for telling me about interior decorating. I don't know. Whatever the fuck it is that someone has shared their knowledge with you, thank them and ask them for more. You know what I mean? Don't be intimidated. And so often, like I was talking, I never really got to my point before we moved from the lion generation to now we are not generation but phase of society over many millennia. Now we're into this peacock phase. We now not are intimidated by physical prowess but of mental prowess. We aren't allowed to humiliate physically other people, but we could humiliate them mentally, and we find that intimidating. And I think that a lot of people, when they meet someone smart, right, they feel intimidated, including myself. I felt that many times. Now, I'm I don't know what singular event. I don't know if there was a singular event or culmination of events, but I'm very different now. I would not be intimidated at all. In fact, I would be very, very excited. I love being around masters of their craft. They probably think I'm annoying. I love asking them questions. I want to know what their challenges are, what they love about it, what drew them to those things that they're masters of. Because I'm not a master of all crafts. There's a lot of things I'm not a master of. I would love to be able to learn. How many years did it take them to learn something they could pass on to me? Bam, right? And now I know so many things by simply shedding my ego away to where I don't have to feel personally attacked with someone that corrected something I was. If I said something wrong and someone corrected me and I felt betrayed or hurt, how ridiculous would that be, right? People are like that. I've been checking outside just in case I had an audience or something. That would be weird. It's sort of rainy out there, but it is also would be weird for a passerby to see this dude in the shop sitting here talking. But I guess I'm talking to a computer, so that's normal nowadays. I guess it was sort of normal. What's his name was talking to tape recorder, Kurt Russell in The Thing. He was in Alaska, like in the 70s or 80s or something. I guess that was normal back then. All right, so ignorance. Again, we should not be afraid of our own ignorance. We should see our own ignorance, realize that by definition we are average of most things that we do, unless we're a specialist in that thing. And also remember, you're most likely not a specialist in most things, because think about this. When you become a specialist, you realize how hard it is to really be a good specialist. And some people are really, really good. Great. Share and don't be a dick. I think that's a good way that we could all live together and help each other grow as humanity. But let's talk about some of the things that are imposing on that. I guess in the next episode. But until then, hey, by the way, Olivia Munn is going to be featured on CBS This Morning on Thursday morning. Wait, Thursday morning, I think. And for Asian, something about Asian kids, I can read this thing. And she's there's a letter that she wrote and some really cool stuff, and that's happening on Thursday. So check it out. Oh no, I think he might have missed it. Let's see here. All right, what was I? What do we got? She said, but yes, check it out in the morning. Come on, why? Why does this have to be like all ridiculous? I just want to get if I have the cheapest phone. Oh, Thursday, yes, CBS morning, 7 to 9 a.m. Very cool. So check that out, and especially if you happen to be an Asian kid. Sounds like Asian youths. youths, who's who she's addressing. So that should be cool. Um, Being half Asian myself, I feel like she may be talking to a part of me. That'd be, yeah. So hey, there you go. Anyway, what else? Anything? Put your questions in the comments. Make sure like, subscribe, tell your friends. It's okay to talk about Boyd Club or Fight Club or whatever club. By the way, yes, there will be some more crazy stuff on the channel at some point. But let's talk about some crazy shit. Why not? Let's do it. All right. Until next time. By the way, what I say? Seprock, and yeah, always seeking the truth all the time. Don't be afraid. Face it.